Hi everyone, great to meet you. My name is Mateusz Bochenczak from AppsFLyer, and today I'll be talking to you about MarTech. Let me open the presentation and we'll kick it right away. So we'll try to cover today a couple of questions around marketing technology stack, and hopefully this presentation will be useful to you when it comes to deciding the cornerstone and the underlying foundation of your business growth. Before we start, let me quickly introduce who are we for those who don't use us or don't know us. So AppsFLyer is the global market leader when it comes to the MMP and attribution world. We are very proud of almost $300 million in funding, more than 1,000 employees recently, 19 offices globally, which of course in COVID changed a little bit, and 65% of the market share. But what really makes us the most proud of is the trust that our clients gives us, and the fact that we have 99.4% ratio of customer retention, which is a clear testament to the fact that AppsFLyer is a right choice to you when it comes to your attribution partner. What we'll be covering today is, as I mentioned, a couple of questions around marketing technology stack. So at the first section, we'll try to answer the question, what MarTech really is, what are the key characteristics of the marketing technology stack. Then we'll talk about what do you need to know while building a MarTech, then things to consider when you're developing your strategy, and a couple of different interconnected things, and how you should choose the right one. Then, of course, we'll cover the core components, as stack in its definition means that there are a couple of interconnected components that play along with each other. And lastly, I'll also talk about the additional resources that you can utilize to basically boost your learning and make the right decisions when it comes to the marketing technology stack. All right, so let's start with the first question. What MarTech really is and where this acronym actually came from. So first and foremost, marketing technology can be an unfamiliar term to many of you because a couple of years back, it wasn't really talked about too much. And the sexy term that everyone was covering was, of course, growth. Growth of your business, of your digital user acquisition, and so on and so on. But, back then, when you think about what it really described was the intermix of the marketing, engineering, and the product, whereas for the evolution of how people work in the digital businesses, if you even think about your position, your responsibilities in the company, you quickly realize that there was a tremendous shift in the way we work. And the shift was basically around on what we are relying to make the right decisions, to see the right trends, and identifying the patterns. And companies started to use a very complex SDK, API-driven tools to support those business functions. What's even more important, that it was especially crucial for mobile, because from the architectural point of view, mobile is much more, let's say, complex than a website architecture. I will start with the most basic example. Of course, on mobile, for example, we don't have cookies, whereas we have them in web. So even mapping and basically following on where the certain user traffic came from is much harder on mobile. But I would like to also point, before we move on the marketing technology, so we have the definition here on the slide, but I think what's worth mentioning is that a certain sub-functions in marketing, let's take user acquisition manager, almost solely rely on the tools to work on it entirely. So if you think about the tools, they need to provide you with the right insights, the right data, that you can choose the right decisions when it comes to the marketing, product, and engineering. And again, it's sometimes called toys for marketers, and you see that those things change a lot. So from when we're talking about AKA, the different things that the different growth stacks that will be talking about today, we moved to the different nomenclature like MarTech Stack. And what we see is not only for the marketing, even though the name suggests that. It's also for engineering, product, operations, and more. What's quite important is that a deep integration is essential because those things are very, very intertwined. And what I'm trying to explain here that in a rightly built MarTech stack, we will see a certain synergy where 1 + 1 equals more than 2. And again, it's all about education. I mean, in this very fast changing world of mobile ecosystems, this is so important to stay up to date, and the real knowledge is the value that cannot be omitted. And I would like to also point out that by choosing, connecting, implementing, and utilizing the right tools is a way to win in a marketing technology world. Okay, moving on, we'll talk about building a MarTech stack. All right, so let's talk about the second part, which is building a MarTech stack. I think we should start with the actual definition, and I think that's the key for the whole presentation, is that marketing technology is the foundation for growth in modern digital marketing. And it's true. This is due to the many misconceptions around the fact that in this extremely complex world, that data-heavy, decision-driven, you need to have the right interconnected technology system to make those decisions. And many stacks of any kind have loose connections through APIs that talk to one another and help you enrich the data and make a centralized view on your users, on your business, on your games or apps. On the right, we can see the example of an interconnected technology system. And you can see that, you know, from the marketing growth to the product analytics stack to the data warehouse stack, those tools talk to each other. And as I said, help you get the holistic view on your business. But what's very important to note, especially when we talk about the marketing stack, is that there's not one right answer how you should build this one. But if we say that stacks are connected tools that bring each other together, it begs the questions, what types of stacks are there? I think the most important is the distinction between all-in-one versus interconnected. And all-in-one are the one that basically encompasses all those functions within one provider. And a good example would be Adobe here. However, much more common, especially in the gaming world, are the interconnected ones. And those kind of consist of a couple of very important functions when it comes to support the growth. Just to mention attribution, where of course here AppsFLyer leads in the market share, events, product analytics, audiences and segmentation, CRM or customer engagement platforms, analytics and data visualization, which is also extremely important, as well as customer data platforms that brings the whole view together. I would like to stress this one more time. There's no right or wrong answer. There are just pros and cons of each of the solution. For example, in AppsFLyer, we see a lot of people building miniature B2C stacks with, let's say, AppsFLyer, Segment, AWS, or Google, especially Firebase. Maybe some of you are using that as well. And product analytics tools like Amplitude. In B2B space, marketers are moving past the simple implementations of Google Analytics and MailChimp, because now the B2B stacks are incredibly advanced without much effort. So this is really a first decisions that you need to make and understand, however, which one basically answers your needs more. Now let's kind of break down the couple of things that we have between the different types of the marketing stacks. We can see we have the interconnected ones, all-in-one, and do-it-yourself. And before making the decision with which one you would like to go with, there are a couple of considerations you need to take care of. If you, let's say, take the interconnected ones for the first, as a first example, you will see that they usually offer the greatest capability, and that's where the trend is going. I mean, most of our clients are taking the interconnected stacks. However, you need to remember that there's a lot of specialist tools working together, so it can get quite complex. But it's very easy to control data. However, you need to work within a certain existing data model. When it comes to data transport, it's set up and done. There are also ready-made APIs, ready-made connections with, I don't know, AWS bucket that can help you out with this. The cost is priced for individual components, which also is quite important to note when you think about the cost and value side. For the pace of change, this is usually very fast, as those vendors specialize in their field, and they are really putting a lot of effort to be up to date with the current trends and challenges in the ecosystem, where iOS 14 change and ATT prompt is probably the best one to mention. When it comes to innovation, same thing. The pace of change and innovation are always very much connected, and here it happens very, very fast. What's even more challenging in the all-in-one is that it starts doing a certain microphone, I think that's disconnected, but it's back. So moving into the all-in-one stack. The challenge here is that we have a disparate set of legacy and new features bundled, right? Because it's usually one provider that kind of gives you the whole architecture on the stack. The data transport is out of box, of course, and the cost is the enterprise contract. You only negotiate with one party, with one vendor. The pace of change, of course, depends on the capabilities and resources of this company, on the vendor that provides you the stack. And the only issue here, and this is something to consider, that innovation doesn't happen maybe as fast, because it's a collection of all the tools or enterprise tools, which of course have a very big legacy cost. On do-it-yourself, the third option is, of course, do-it-yourself. What you can do, you can retain a maximum control, but at a high cost of your, personally use resources that you need to basically put into work there. The data transport requires engineering and full-time employee effort, because it's not as easy as when the tools are run by the certain models that have been trained in the past. There's, of course, the ongoing engineering maintenance, which also needs to be taken into consideration when thinking about cost. And the pace of change is slow, purely from the fact that it's not usually your main, let's say, USP or your main capability of building the marketing technology stack. And you'd like to focus on different things like making good games or making great apps. On innovation, again, this is probably, as mentioned on a point before, since it's not your main capability, you are not innovating as fast as you potentially could. But basically, if I would like to summarize this, the fewer partners you work with, the better. But it can also come with a certain cost and your abilities to negotiate or the custom solution that you'd like to get for your business. Hope it was clear on the pros and cons of all-in-one versus interconnected versus do-it-yourself stack. Moving on. Okay, let's move on to the MarTech Stack core components, so the part 3 of our little lecture. And I'd like to start by saying that today I hear a lot of people talking about certain capabilities when they think about the marketing technology stack. But at its very core, regardless how you will connect those certain pieces together, you are trying to achieve a solution, right? That help you achieve a certain
standard capabilities, help you execute things, and in general, improve your UA and growth capabilities. And I think regardless on how you will put this together, you're looking for three main things, which is efficiency, efficacy, and scalability. And doing marketing or doing UA in general requires a certain technical capabilities in the modern world. And what are we looking at when it comes to those core components, as you can see on the slide here? And I think the most important part to note is that each of those components, or the technologies, if you will need to operate in a bigger picture at your company. So we also see that in the last 10 years, certain roles in the company are getting basically a very strong connection to those technical capabilities. Let's take a user acquisition manager, for example. So this person should be able to not only operate the marketing campaigns or the UA campaigns, but also understand the attribution, understand deep linking to acquire those users. As someone with a growth title, of course, can be, for example, only responsible for engaging these audiences, so the audience segmentation or email push and the other CRM capabilities could be very important here. And I would like to point out that MarTech in general is creating those very specialized, niche, very often not so easy to find jobs that help the mobile first or digital first businesses grow. Very briefly, we can see that we see attribution here, the deep linking, data hygiene, email, and the other, let's say, engagement platforms, as well as product analytics and data visualization. They all intertwined, they connect together, and they help you achieve the growth we are talking about all the time. Let's try to break down those functions in more detail. Let's start with the user acquisition, which usually is the starting point, the centerpiece, the cornerstone of the most marketing technology stacks. On the right, you can see probably the most common marketing diagram in the world. And of course, when you think about the digital or the mobile first UA, a good UA manager should cover all those points, depending on the need of the campaign. And the issue here, or something that's most of the UA managers are struggling with, that is more complicated than ever right now, because there are many channels that are, despite our best intentions to bring them together, that operate as completely separate products. If you think about iOS, Android, and web, they are a separate entities on its own, and getting the very holistic view, and of course, I'm not even mentioning the big companies, the SRNs, just to think about Firebase that don't report Facebook, and so on. We do see that we need to try our best to bring it together to have the full horizon for the business. On the user acquisition, the attribution for piece that AppsFLyer covers for you is to analyze and optimize campaign, and that's the main goal. And we do it through looking at different metrics, different channels, integrated partners, impressions, installs, conversions, or the in-app events, and boiling it down to the creative level, which helps you optimize your marketing spend, optimize the channels that you use, and trying to get the best results depending on the goal. And in AppsFLyer, what we also do by being the market leader is that we have the access to a lot of data, and we can provide you with a certain insights and trends that we see across the world in different categories and genres. Here we can see the data that is based on Android and iOS. And something very interesting that happened from Q1 2020 to Q1 this year is that the budgets are shifting from tier 1 networks to the tier 2. And of course, the Forex strategy or the more mid-core, hardcore games are still very heavy on the tier 1 networks. But here we see that more and more marketers are trying out tier 2 networks or the smaller partners that were not as popular as, let's say, a couple of years back. Again, very important thing, the deep linking. We are all trying to optimize the user experience, increase conversion, make it as easy as possible. So you can see that, marketing technology, part of it is trying to make it as simple for the end user as possible. Deep linking is a great example of that, both deep linking and deferred deep linking, where basically someone who's not a user of the app can see the ad and be directly redirected to the App Store download and open at the relevant landing page. We see this. We see this example here with the let's say e-commerce store that serves a certain shoes with a certain size, and within just one click or 2 clicks with the installation, you can see that it's being directed in the right place, in the right landing page in the app. Next, very important part is the engagement, because just installs won't necessarily build a business value for you. It's all about having being close to your end user, being close to your audiences, and understand how they interact with each other. So engagement tools, very important part of the marketing technology stack. As you can see, we are coming in into the full picture, so moving from UA into engagement, and so on and so on. I would like to only point out that just maybe a brief note about how fast it's changing, because 10 to 15 years ago, it was mostly measured through, let's say, Google Analytics and webmaster tools to understand the sorts of impressions, clicks, click-through rate, and so on. And because today is much more complicated, a right engagement tool can help you out with understanding how your audiences interact with your product. What is the intelligent CRM including normally? It's an email, push notification, in-app messaging, content cards, email, text messages, OTT, and many more, because we see we are living in the omni-channel world where digital and offline are merging together. Especially this is very relevant for the e-commerce industry. And we see that the granular segmentation based on behaviors can enable a better re-engagement and drive a better business results. Then we will move into the product analytics. Of course, it's very important to be on a constant improvement loop with your product, because we can of course all have hypotheses, but data-driven approach will enable to test those. And product analytics can help you out to basically improve your test and learn circle, and then make sure that you apply those changes as you go, depending on what your audiences are looking for. And the most interesting part about it is that we have all those A/B testing components of the marketing technology stacks. And I have clients, and I know my gaming studios that I work with that have doing more than 1,000 of A/B tests every day, starting from the creative level to the product level, and they all have one goal in mind: how to improve the user journey, how to differentiate your product from the others, and what kind of features will allow basically growth, since as we mentioned in the beginning, that's the main goal of having a good marketing technology stack. Lastly, the product analytics, when it comes to a separate component, it's the data analysis and visualizations that will help you look at it and understand the patterns, as usually you are sitting on a goldmine of data, but being able to correctly analyze it and visualize it is also a key to make the right decisions. Again, we're in the end, what's the most important part around the whole idea behind it is the CDPs. So basically creating let's say, a centralized system that's looking at your customer and having the both events and audiences from different channels and creating those ones, this one overarching activity that helps you guide your decisions when it comes to your users. In customer data platforms, we see that, except for measuring user activity, unifying customer data in a single profile, federating data to other tools, and managing data flows across the stack, you have this one holistic view on your customer database. What does it allow you to see? Again, I want to share a couple of benchmarks and insights from the AppsFLyer side. We see that strategy and slots get most payments within the first 24 hours. And this is quite interesting because those are the different clients that are utilizing the in-app events, in this case, first purchase, right? And we see you can see a certain, let's say, benchmarks within you can fall in having a game in a certain, sorry, I lost the word. In a certain genre. Yes, that's the word. So let's say if you are operating within the match-free puzzles, you know that in the first, let's say, I don't know, 48 hours, you are looking at something between 30 and 10% of your users making the first purchase from the ones that purchase within the first 30 days from install. Okay, moving on to summary and resources. All right, we're moving to the final part of this presentation, which is the summary and the additional resources. So let's kind of recap on what we talked about today. There are some key takeaways that I'd like you to take from this presentation from the marketing technology world. So understanding what, why, and how to build it. First and foremost, what is MarTech? And I think it's very important to remember that it's a key pillar, a cornerstone to your digital growth for your business and moving forward for your apps and games. The MarTech Stack process constitutes of 4 steps: is choosing, connecting, implementing, and utilizing the right tools for your growth. What we covered in the next section is how to build a MarTech stack. And we mentioned 3 main, let's say, strategies around it. So first and foremost, interconnected, all-in-one, or do it yourself. And regardless of the path you choose, the main benefits of MarTech generally boil down to 3 things: efficiency, efficacy, and scalability. And I'd like to point out one more time, there's no one size fits all. So you really need to think about your business needs and where you want to go with your mobile first business. Lastly, we talk about the components, and the core components are the tools that guide your user acquisition, user engagement, product analytics, and of course, the centralized customer data platforms that allow you to have a holistic view on your business. And as you can see, it can get pretty complex when it comes to the MarTech stack. So you need to have a good and clear way how to manage it. And as with any more complex tools, especially if you choose the interconnected ones or do it yourself, it is crucial to map it and understand how data flows between those entities to avoid the congestions and functionality challenges. And the data flows are generally indicated by arrows with the general direction left to right. You can see a great example here on the right side of the slide. And the one thing that didn't change is that the customer data platforms are still the central management systems for those data flows. So for those who don't know what CDP is a software that collects and unifies first-party customer data from multiple sources, as we saw before, to build a single coherent view of each customer. And I guess the great exercise to do before you jump into signing and negotiating with the new vendors is to understand how you would like it all to flow for your own needs. Today, I only wanted to give you a sneak peek in the MarTech Stack technology. So I'm also linking here a resource from AppsFLyer, which is a very comprehensive guide on how to build a mobile-centric MarTech Stack. If you have time, it's really worth taking a look and even comparing your current setup with what potentially you want to achieve with different vendors being available. So on that note, I'd like to thank you for your time and for listening to me. And in case you have any further questions, you want to discuss your MarTech strategy, you want to learn more about attribution, not mentioning such things as, SCAD network, iOS 14 changes, and anything that's on top of your mind in the mobile-first ecosystem, please reach out to me. Let's connect on LinkedIn. I'm always very happy to talk and to exchange ideas around it. Once again, thank you very much for your time. Have a great rest of the Digital Dragons conference and hope to see you very, very soon.